I too have serious concerns in relation to this. But on first reading of the bill, you think it's fairly innocuous that we're going to punish receiving training for terrorism, travelling and organising and so on.
Is your mic working?
Yeah, don't worry. Yeah. And then you look at it more clearly and you see that we're amending a legislation from 20 years ago to make it stronger, and we're doing it on the basis of a directive that we weren't obliged to buy into, but nevertheless we gave our word to, and we're adding in 3 new things, including what has already been referred to, the public provocation to commit a terrorist offence. And we're doing this on the basis of a directive that itself is extremely problematic and has been highlighted by the Fundamental Rights Agency and by a whole network of European network of national human rights institutions who made a number of recommendations, Minister. And we seem to have ignored all of that. And the European Commission itself noted difficulties with proving legislative intent, and that some member states find it challenging to qualify violent extreme right-wing acts as acts of terrorism, which the Commission noted to be crucial to ensure that the directive is applied in a non-discriminatory manner. So we have a directive that was brought in without complying with essential procedures at the time, a directive that's proving difficult itself, and yet we have the Commission going on actually prosecuting or taking infringement proceedings against over 20 countries that they haven't actually implemented the directive. That's extremely faulty. And we're going on another level altogether, a bizarre level, where we don't need to implement this directive, but we're bringing in legislation that's seriously problematic. And I want to thank the Library again for both of all their work in relation to this. And I haven't the time to go into the concerns raised, but they're there laid out in black and white, Minister, that we're absolutely ignoring. And then when I look at how terrorism is defined, and of course we all need to have legislation that prevents terrorism, that deals with terrorism, but that terrorism must be analysed within a broader remit. And if we in this Dáil can't recognise that Israel is a terrorist state, then we're in serious trouble. Israel, and we haven't condemned, attacked Iran without provocation, went in and bombed nuclear sites with all the problems that entails on the basis that they had weapons or were almost ready to have weapons. So we take preemptive strikes. Your government, Minister, and you for Minister for Justice don't seem to have any problem with that. A terrorist state taking action against all international law. And instead of, you see, everything has to be done on the basis of trust. And while at one level I'm agreeing with you that this is necessary, when you actually look at it, you see how problematic it is. And then you see the tunnel vision that will only look one way at terrorism, but we won't look at the real terrorist acts that have taken place. So we're losing count of the amount of dead people on the ground from bombs, from destruction, from starvation, and from depriving them of water. We see Palestinian children and fathers and mothers being shot, and I hate the picture, but it's like going to a fair and you've moving targets, and you have the Defence Army shooting moving targets and killing, and we're standing idly by. And we define terrorism here. We don't define terrorism. We look at terrorism and looking at general, very, very general and expansive notions that should have no place in legislation. Public provocation to commit terrorist offence glorifies, the word glorifies. I don't think I've ever seen the word glorify in legislation. Perhaps you've taken it straight from the 2005 Act. If so, we shouldn't be reusing it, and if not, it has no place. Glorification is something I've seen in church prayers and in religion, but to glorify is just way too broad. And if we look at and I'm taking Israel and Palestine, and I'm looking at what has happened there. We stood idly by when Amnesty said that Israel were operating an apartheid state. And I've mentioned this many times, and it's important to keep recommending it, saying it, because this government and the last government and the current Taoiseach told us uncomfortable with the word apartheid. We never discussed the report because the government was uncomfortable with the word apartheid used in relation to Palestine. And then in relation to Israel. Then Israel goes on and designates 6 human rights organisations, 2 of which we fund directly, designated them as terrorist organisations. Now just stay with me, Minister, for a minute. If we're designating, or allowing Israel to designate 6 human rights terrorist as terrorists, doesn't that make a mockery of an open analysis as to what terrorism is? And we allowed that to happen under our watch. And they were to come back, and Europe came back and said there was no evidence that they were operating as terrorist organisations, and still that happened. And so today you're bringing to us a bill that hasn't been subjected to pre-legislative scrutiny. Now that in itself is appalling, because all of the issues around this should have been teased out with pre-legislative scrutiny. There is no urgency to this bill in the sense that we never had to comply with the directive. So that's why pre-legislative scrutiny is there, to tease out these issues. And we're left now, and I'm grateful and I'm delighted I've had 6 or 7 minutes in relation to this, but this should be teased out, a pre-legislative scrutiny. I know the committee waived it. They shouldn't have, in my opinion, and it's very important that we tease out this and we get an opportunity to look, how is terrorism arising, who are the biggest culprits, what money is going into it. None of that while we go down a tunnel vision of looking at very vague terms like glorifying and incentivising. Thank you, Chair.